Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about soul tethers and what a soul tether is, in my opinion. This is some deepy weepy soul stuff, guys. So if you haven't heard already, or you haven't read on Patreon how I feel about soul lessons, parallel lives, soul ties, all of that information is available elsewhere and can help you to understand what I'm talking about if you. I have this theory that I will recap quickly for you guys, which is basically the soul may be living out parallel lives all at once, and not every single incarnation you've ever had, but I feel like there are going to be so many carrying on in simultaneous multiple universes, and the information travels back along soul tendrils back to the soul nexus, which is outside of the physical incorporeal reality. It gets very complex, but I'm going to stop there, otherwise we'll spend this whole video talking about that. What I feel that soul tethers is between two different people's souls, and I put it like this: when two souls reach out for one another with such an intensity that they fuse on a spiritual level, a soul tether can occur, and this, I believe, is problematic. In the living mind, there may be separation, or the two souls may not even know each other in this incarnation, which can make a soul tether worse. Healthy soul ties are an acknowledgement, but also a factor of energy release and letting go. But there is no by means a judgment if one has a soul tether. Indeed, I have been experiencing one. People, as I said, may have had alternate lifetimes over which this physical incarnation has no control. So I believe what happens with a soul tether, what it is when two souls cross over and become so invested in one another, that there's two souls on an energetic level reach out for one another and infuse into one another with such an intensity that it can take real hard work to start to even heal and unravel this problem. And I feel like you can get this from different incarnations because of the parallel lifetime experience that I talked about. Soul ties is different, but I do talk about how I wondered whether or not deja vu and things of that nature were the memories being fed back from different incarnations along the soul tendrils back to the nexus that is outside of the self, and if they cross over at certain points, like the memories go awry or come through this incarnation, even if they're not meant to, and there's just like a transference of information. It also being something that you can travel through the spiritual ecosystem. It's just something that I do to access past life information. That's the way I view it. So what happens when two very spiritually aware, perhaps souls, or very powerful energetic souls become so entangled with one another in one incarnation that can form what I'm calling a soul tether? You could also call it like an anchor or a hook, or something that really gets into you soul wise, and what that means and what that feels like and what that looks like. From my experience, I have had one major one in this lifetime, and I believe that it tends to be romantic entanglements, because those are the most emotional, those are the most vulnerable for the most part, and those can leave us full of love but also full of despair if it all goes awry. And so I have the feeling that for myself that it's romantic relationships of some design that causes these soul tethers. That's not to say that they couldn't intermingle in different ways, but I just think given the almost emotionally volatile state of relationships, for good or for ill, volatile not necessarily meaning negative, but just churning up of emotions, those are the things that leave imprints on the soul. And for me, the soul incarnation, this physical incarnation has had one soul tether within this lifetime of mine. And in some ways I consider myself fortunate that it at least was within this lifetime, so I knew where it was coming from, even if I was very lost about what it was and what to do, and this cycle has kind of revealed it to me. The soul tether from this lifetime was from the first man that I fell in love with, and have never loved anyone like that since. I fell for him when I was a teenager, a young teenager, and so was he. Like, we were the same age. Let's just point that out at that time, and still are kind of. But it's not something that I can fully explain why you fall for a person that you do in this fashion. It's like your souls recognize each other on such a level that they just reach out for each other. And some people, you know, this is the soulmate thing. This is the twin flame thing. That's what they call it, or they call an expression of it. But it definitely leaves a tie, a tether that sucks away at you from the inside, especially if it doesn't work out. These are the sorts of people that people call, you know, when you hear old people talk about the one that got away, that they never stopped loving no matter what, and left such a massive impact on them, and they can't, like, even, you know, 50 years later, they can't forget them. That's what it feels like. And for me, if you looked at this person in the street, you wouldn't think anything of it. You wouldn't think they were a special person. You wouldn't think they were particularly handsome, and you wouldn't think they were special. But there was something about him that my soul just connected in a way that doesn't still fully make sense. There may be past life stuff there. I think there probably is. There is just this bond that occurred, and that loved this person immensely, and my soul loved him without condition. And in this incarnation, he did not love me without condition. I feel like the souls were still connected for a very long time afterwards, and we went out when we were in our young teen years, and then we went out again when I was 19, around the, you know, the very late teen years, moving into the 20s, and I was in such a place that I was very broken by the stuff that had happened to in my family life, and he could not support me. He could not support me. He could not help me. He chose not to, and he could not, and that ended at that point. And he had contacted me a few times later on, in, you know, years down the line, and eventually he married someone else and now has kids, I think. And for me, my soul was massively divided. I'm just going to be really honest with you guys. My soul was really divided on finding out he married someone else, because half of me was like, I want you to be happy, and the other half of me was like, I don't forgive you, because my soul was so sure that he was the one to end up with in the end, you know, so sure of it. Didn't doubt it in anything. And so my soul, my heart felt betrayed in this lifetime, even though he had hurt me already. So it was a bit like, okay. And then I try not to think about it, right? I try not to look at it. I try not to consider what is happening with him anymore. And then, like, with this cycle, I had dreams about him for 2 weeks straight, And it's not the first time that I have been dreaming about him, and this whole situation of feeling, you know, betrayed by him and feeling like my heart was broken all over again. And I've never loved anybody like him since. I've never been able to, never allowed myself to. He wasn't the first boyfriend by any means. Like, well, you know, I hadn't had that many. We were 15, I think. 15, 16, 15, 16, I can't remember. But yeah, so I was in this cycle when we're talking about death, when we're talking about memory, we're talking about soul lessons. And then I was dreaming about him solidly for 2 weeks straight. And I realized there was a tether in my soul. And when I looked at it, when I really looked at it, I was a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit teary and a little bit overwhelmed, because the following things happened when I went into spiritual space. A soul tie between 2 people can usually look like a thread, like a thread. This looked like a tree trunk. And I was like, yeah. And I had asked someone who is not involved, doesn't know him and all the rest of it, like, why did they think the dreams were coming up? And they said, I get the feeling like they're thinking about you. And so that brought to my awareness of there was a soul to soul connection. There was a soul to soul meeting, like the 2 souls had reached out for one another and had entwined and enmeshed with one another previously. And this didn't surprise me at all. And I was able to hear his soul kind of answering back when I created sacred space. And I had my spirit guides there the whole time to make sure that what I was hearing was not my own ego. It was not what I wanted to hear. It was not like me making stuff up or anything like that, but it was what was being said. And so I went into this spiritual meditation, and I basically had him in a room, in a black room with no lights, basically, and just us talking. And I just started by just saying everything that I needed to say to this person that I would not get the chance to in this lifetime, because in this lifetime he was talking to me. He was telling me he missed me, how much he missed me, how certain things would make him think about me. Then he started dating the person he married, and he blocked me, so I never got any kind of closure with this person. And I feel like the soul needed that a little bit, and I feel like it's going to take more than just one, because the first session was heavy, and I was like, I had to come to the realization for myself that I might always love this person. And I had said to his soul, I might love you until I die. See how emotional it's getting for me already. But I have to accept that that's not going to manifest in this lifetime, and allow it to go. Just allow it to let go. And that is part of what we did in that room, in that soul healing, in that soul tether, to begin unraveling the interconnection. And his soul was resistant too. And so it's always interesting to me how there is a disparity between the working mind and the soul energy underneath. And some people use that as like an excuse to kind of like circumvent people's free choice in this realm. Like, oh, they said that on this level, but their soul says something else, so it's not true, blah, blah, blah. It's still their truth, and you still have to respect their life and their decisions. But it's not about getting a person back or manipulating a person or anything like that. What it is about is healing this great big painful soul tether that is draining energy away. And some of the ways that you can identify it is like thinking of them at really random times, and it's not just like 1 or 2 like memories popping up every now and again, and there might be no through correlation. It might be really random times it's just popping up, and it doesn't seem to make sense, but it's happening quite a bit. I was dreaming about this person a lot, and it was trying to like change what happened in the waking life, and it was mixing up who they used to be with who they are now, and trying to mix and play with those situations. So it was trying to like the soul was trying to resolve this situation, which was a real problem for it. And so because of that, like it was something going on, there's something untoward there that wasn't quite healed, wasn't quite sorting out. And then there's that feeling of like you can feel them, you can feel their emotions, you can sense their thoughts, and it is deadly accurate. Like, you know, in the past that that's happened and it's been deadly accurate. It's not just like up here imagining it, you know, it comes from like a sideball sort of, you know, it's very like what, and you weren't really looking to pick up on it, and suddenly you are picking up on things. So those are some of the signs that it might be a soul tether. It's also this feeling, this deep emotional feeling of connection that goes beyond anything that you can fully explain. And for me, like, he's not anybody in the spiritual community. He had empathic spiritual ability, but his upbringing was Christian, so he probably wouldn't want anything to do with that. But he did at one point, like when I was in a lot of pain, he was like desperate to take my pain away, and he did it. So you know, he had some kind of ability underneath, and he would never want to acknowledge it, I don't think. And I don't think he, you know, he definitely wouldn't want to acknowledge it, but he definitely wouldn't embrace it or go down that path. And that's his choices, of course. And he has made all his choices in his life and may be happy with them. That's the place you have to get to, because if you get into this soul work, this soul tether work, and you're trying to manipulate another person into a choice that was not their own, you've lost your way, and it becomes something broken, and it becomes manipulation. It's quite abusive, really, trying to force another person to love you back just because your souls have this strange connection that doesn't make a lot of sense to you. And I actually asked my guides, I was like, is there different incarnations going on here? And they were like, yes, and that's why it's such a problem. And I went, what do you mean, why is that such a problem? And they were like, this is the lifetime it didn't work out, the only one. And I was in floods and floods of tears, because that, yeah, it brings up like failure shadows, it brings up all this stuff. It's difficult, it's hard. And so you can see how emotional it makes me even to this day. And when it can have that kind of impact on you years and years and years on, there's something different about it, something very different about it. But you have to get to that place like I did, where you have to be like, I might love them until I die. I might never be able to stop, because it never really made sense in the first place. It just was, and it was just intense. But